It's time to put the good in your morning. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Today, a ping pong prodigy looks to take the world by storm at just 3 years old.
We got one more day of temperatures that are going to be in the high 70s. But wait until we get to future track because there's a cold front coming. The latest from the Skywatch Weather Center.
And we reflect on the career of Alex Trebek. The KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 starts right now.
Thanks for joining us on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Tanya Bach. Major News Network Saturday projected Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States. Biden, who turns 78 at the end of this month, will become the nation's oldest president when he is inaugurated in January. Senator Kamala Harris is America's first female and first Black and South Asian vice president-elect. The race was called Saturday morning after the Associated Press, CBS News, Fox News, and others projected Biden won the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, giving him more than the 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. Biden was also projected to take Nevada, putting him at 279 electoral votes. Only Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alaska are still in play. Plenty of voters in Kansas are upset about Saturday's call on the election. Trump supporters gathered outside the Kansas House in Topeka, voicing their opposition to Biden. The dozens of people assembled there said they had concerns about fraud and corruption. A similar scene played out in Jefferson City, where hundreds gathered in front of the state capitol with flags and shirts showing their support for Trump, saying they believe the election was stolen. Protesters at the Stop the Steal rally walked to the governor's mansion in hopes that Mike Parson would hear them and publicly support the president. Over in Baxter Springs, the community came together to show their support for the brave men and women who serve our country, marching downtown in the 7th Annual Veterans Parade. Different groups, including the Lions Club and Baxter Springs High School Marching Band, took part. Afterwards, a Veterans Memorial Service was held. Holiday cheer is spreading in Pittsburgh. Motorcyclists got together Saturday for the 36th Annual Toy Run, donating dozens of gifts for kids to the Salvation Army. Local bikers gathered outside the Big Lots in Pittsburgh, picking up toys from there and other local businesses to donate to the cause. Different biker groups headed out together on a parade down South Broadway to the Salvation Army, where buckets and tables were waiting for the toy donations. This event kicks off the Salvation Army's Christmas Toy Box campaign, which helps out hundreds of families in need each year.
It's important because, you know, these bikers just want these kids to have a good Christmas, especially this year with everything that's been going on. I think it's important that the community gets the help where they can get the help.
Last year, the Toy Run donated more than 200 toys. Over at the McCune Farm to Market store, folks got crafty making holiday signs yesterday. This is one of their first classes they brought back after putting activities on hold due to COVID-19. They are still keeping things relatively small. A total of 15 people could sign up to paint these Christmas-themed signs.
We normally do classes 2 or 3 times a month, but with the pandemic, all of our classes have been suspended. So we're excited to be able to offer a smaller, safer version of our class so people can make some unique Christmas gifts and socialize a little bit.
You can learn more about activities at the McCune Farm to Market store by checking out the link we've shared in this article on our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. Well, 3-year-old Zhang Yunbo touts the table tennis skills of someone 10 times his age. Video of the talented toddler has gone viral because of his ping pong proficiency. His grandmother started training him on their small coffee table when he was 1.5 years old, and he was quite interested. Now, with all his experience, he can already play on full-size professional tables.
It's 3.
He's good.
3. That's tremendous.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's half his life, but it's a year and a half, right? So that's
Eye-hand coordination.
More training than I do.
I mean, you can get that good in a year and a half.
Oh man, she's got multiple balls going too.
Oh, yeah, I got a feeling Grandma knows what she's doing there.
This
Yeah, all right,
awesome.
kid.
Good job, kid.
You know what? I got a challenger for him. Forrest Gump.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
Erwin,
okay.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
you get him in the first round, and then I'll wait for Forrest to show up.
She's
Bring it
even
on.
got him doing some ankle exercises too. That's awesome.
That's great. All right, guys, live look outside of Television City. Just a gorgeous Monday start, even with the cloud cover, provided us with some just marvelous looking colors in the Monday morning sky. Freeman Health System sky camera, like a little overcast right there. Clouds kind of moved in a little bit, but our temperature's wonderful, 62 degrees already. We were sitting in the 60s even before sunrise. Now we get that little dip, so we're holding on to some 60s for the most part. Welch's, though, still at 67, 63 in Lamar, and 62 in Fort Scott. No worries on the bus stop forecast, minus a little uptick in the southerly wind. That's the only thing that's going to affect them, though, as they head out the door. Eventually about 15 to 20 miles per hour, but I mean, look, we're pushing up high 60s. We can probably even see some low 70s there by the 9 o'clock hour. And no worries when you go to pick them up from school as well, or if they got to walk home from the bus. As a matter of fact, it's going to be a little bit warm by the time they get ready to come home this afternoon. Our winds have kind of ebbed and flowed. We were close to 20 miles per hour, then we actually saw the flag just go ahead and lay down. Now getting back on a little bit, 16 miles per hour in Chanute, only 12 though in Joplin. Clouds remain on the dry side. Here's what we're looking at up in the northwest right there, starting to see a little thunderstorm activity out in western Kansas, but the big factor is what's on the back side of it. As on the northwest of the jet stream and the trough, big cold front. Now this thing's going to sag from the northwest down to the southeast, but don't worry, it's not going to affect our Monday. Actually not going to be on us until we get into Tuesday. And all this right here that's causing winter weather advisories, even blizzard warnings up in portions of the upper Midwest, it will skirt way to our north. We won't need to worry about any of that. Let's put future track in motion and talk about the thunderstorms that do develop early Tuesday morning. We're going to see some high winds, also some heavy rains. More northwest you go, a little bit more severe. It's going to be fair share of lightning as well. We need the precipitation at this point in time. Look at the big difference in temperature right there from Wichita to Joplin. So as the thunderstorms move off to the east right here and the sky's clear, our temperatures just plummet throughout the course of the late morning, afternoon, and into the nighttime. As a matter of fact, we're going to get as low as the 30s from Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. After that, pretty much normal November temperatures, which, you know, actually the cold front kind of evens us out after a very warm start to November. Tanya and Jesse?
Well, up next, a Florida man breaks an Ironman Challenge world record.
And we're going to be talking with Emily Frankowski with Connected Culture. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. We'll be back after this.
As coronavirus deaths rise in the U.S. and so many families lose loved ones, mental health experts are bracing for a grief pandemic. Most people experience intense grief when they lose someone close, but for some, they are unable to adapt to the loss as time goes on. Elise Preston has more on what's known as complicated grief.
These photos are a glimpse into the life of Eric Moldberg and what he had ahead of him. But in 2004, the 13-year-old died of cancer, leaving his mother, Stephanie, overwhelmed by his unimaginable loss.
He was so brave.
4 years after Eric's death, Stephanie said it felt as though it just happened every single day.
My grief hurt so much, it was almost like physical. I didn't have any faith in myself to make a good decision.
She was suffering from prolonged grief disorder, or complicated grief, a condition that makes it difficult for a person to function because they experience intense, continued longing, sadness, and preoccupying thoughts of a loved one.
People are stuck. They can't find a way forward, and very often they're sort of caught up in some kind of either being afraid of the grief and trying to avoid it all the time.
Dr. Catherine Shears, the director of the Center for Complicated Grief at Columbia University. She's concerned with so many loved ones separated and dying alone during the COVID pandemic. We could see more people suffering prolonged grief.
Feeling guilty about not having been with them, and angry about not being able to be with them. And those kinds of reactions to COVID can become derailers if you don't deal with them.
A recent study shows for every person who dies of COVID-19, 9 families are left to grieve.
With the death toll climbing, millions are grieving. Therapists are expecting to see a bereavement pandemic in the coming months.
Stephanie went through a 16-week treatment program at Columbia.
I found out that you can grieve and live at the same time, and grieve and move forward in the same time.
She says she's grateful she can now find joy in her life. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
About 20% of people who mourn the loss of loved ones deal with complicated grief. Women and people of color are more prone, as well as people with a history of anxiety and mental health struggles. 21-year-old Floridian Chris Nikic showed a heart of iron when he swam, biked, and ran his way into a record. He became the first Down syndrome person to complete an Ironman triathlon. Nikic set the goal with the help of his father, who was steered by a guide. And he finished a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and 26.2-mile run in a single day. Wow. Nikic has endured 2 heart surgeries, 7 schools, and several ear canal reconstructions, but he was able to achieve one of his lifelong goals.
That story right there just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Impressive.
That's absolutely incredible.
The endurance and
Jeez, good for him.
Good job.
All right, folks,
Good
if you're sitting around at some point today, you go, oh, I'm just too tired to get that done. Think about Chris Nikic right there. That's great. Hey, let's talk about where we are here through the month of November. Our average high for November, 72.1. And if we go back to November 1st, that includes that 57 that we had on the first day of the month. So right now, average all this for the first 10 days. This is the 7th warmest start to November on record. And if we could somehow eliminate that 57 right there and take into account the 2nd to the 9th where we are, it'd actually be about the 4th warmest start. 2005 still the warmest that we've had on record. Freeman Health System Sky Camera in Joplin, where we sit at a very comfortable 62 degrees. That wind's been everywhere. It's about done trying to say what it's going to do, because it'll sit there at 3 miles per hour. Next time I look, it's coming in at 20 miles per hour. 66 in Parsons, 62 in Carthage, and how about 60 in Pittsburgh? On the bus stop forecast, going to be absolutely delightful for the kiddos, and even warmer by the time that they're headed home. I mean, we're talking about 66 there for the first recess, and probably about 77 when they get ready to come on back from class. Once again, those are sustained winds. It is going to pick up here as we work throughout the course of our day. A little cloud cover, but dry for the most part until this activity gets to us, and that won't be here until Tuesday morning. A look at Tropical Storm Ada along the Florida coast. Kind of interesting. What it wants to do is backtrack, come back as a Category 1, and then head toward the Florida Panhandle by about the middle of next week. So those warnings all along the coast of Florida, those aren't going to go anywhere this week. Let's talk about Monday in the 4 states as we'll get into the high 70s, but here's the big development. It transpires late tonight, early tomorrow morning as thunderstorm activity begins off to the northwest. We're going to see heavy rain, high wind and lightning, especially in this quadrant of the 4 states. It'll lighten up a little bit as it pushes off to the east. But one thing that it will not slow down is the temperature drop. As it moves through, the skies clear out. We're down into the 50s and 40s for Tuesday evening, and then 30s for Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We'll have a rebound, though, for our daily highs, be able to get back into the 60s for most of the week and pick up some much-needed rain here by the time we get to the weekend. Be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. This morning on the KOAM News Now Facebook page in our Insta poll, asking if you think President Trump should continue legal challenges in battleground states or concede to former Vice President Biden. Jerry Morrissey says our president should fight this crooked election and take it to the Supreme Court, period. The American people were robbed by a deceitful Democratic Party. Jennifer Kennedy Richards says, bleep no, keep fighting, take it all the way, show every single act of fraud you can. Jennifer says it's out there. Catherine Lewis Ortiz says it was 290 electoral votes to 214. No recount's going to change that enough to change the election. He's been saying since 2016 he would only accept the results if he won. He should admit he lost and make the transition go smoothly. As far as our Insta poll goes right now, 61% of you saying no, President Trump should not concede. You got all morning to vote. KOAMnewsnow.com/vote. Over to Jesse in Studio 14.
Thank you, Michael. Well, it is time for What the Tech. The world's first Hyperloop ride with actual passengers takes off. Virgin Hyperloop announcing the first safety test of its high-speed levitating pod. Now, 2 people get seated into the pod and hurl their way through a vacuum tube at up to 107 miles per hour. Now, the company hopes to break new ground in human and cargo transportation, aiming to operate commercially by 2030. One possible route could have passengers going the 225-plus miles from New York City to Washington, D.C. in just under 30 minutes. The Australian state of Victoria has announced that a massive 300 megawatt battery will be built in partnership with the Tesla and the French renewable energy company Neoen. Now, the facility will help stabilize the local grid as the use of renewable energy increases, the state's premier said in a press release. It would be triple the size of the original 100 megawatt Tesla facility built at Neoen's site in Hornsdale, South Australia, which was the largest in the world when it began. Now, operations began there in 2017 and since then have upsized to 150 megawatts. Video game console launches only happen every few years, and when they do, it's a pretty big deal for gamers. Rick Damigella has a preview of Sony's PlayStation 5.
Let's go. Nearly 7 years since the launch of its predecessor, Sony's PlayStation 5 has arrived.
I've done all of these launches with PlayStation over the course of many years, and this really is by far the most extraordinary of any of them.
Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO Jim Ryan.
We consider PS5 to be really a quantum leap over its predecessor, to an extent that it's a greater leap than we've ever had in any of these generational transitions, whether it's the 3D audio capability or whether it's the haptic feedback on the controller, which is a wonderful new feature. We just can't wait for the PlayStation community to get its in their millions to get their hands on PlayStation 5.
Sony is getting its system out to the gaming public despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Very strangely and counterintuitively in some ways, I think this exercise has brought us closer as a company and sort of bound us tighter than ever before. And sometimes adversity does that.
And while launch titles like Spider-Man Miles Morales look incredible, veteran video game industry journalist Victor Lucas says the future could look even better.
And what we're going to see, as we always see from console generation to console generation, is developers kind of wrap their heads around what these machines are capable of. And so we'll start to see qualitative improvements that are absolutely going to blow our minds.
Leveling up in Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
Well, Sony's PlayStation 5 is available starting Thursday, November 12th. That's it for Money Watch. And let's check back in with Michael in a little bit with a forecast, and we'll be right back after this.
Alex Trebek, the beloved host of Jeopardy for more than 3 decades, has died at the age of 80 after a nearly 2-year battle with pancreatic cancer. He died at home early Sunday with family and friends at his side. Chris Martinez has more on the life of the legendary TV game show host.
Alex Trebek became the host of Jeopardy in 1984 when Merv Griffin hired him for the revival of the popular TV quiz show. Jeopardy soon became a daily ritual for millions, even on the silver screen.
Of course, it's 27 minutes of Jeopardy.
Over the years, with Trebek as its ever-present host, the show, where answers are always in the form of a question,
James with Polk,
won multiple daytime Emmys, and it gave game shows a new and brainy edge.
America is a very competitive society. I can throw the ball farther than you. I can run faster than you. I can do better on Jeopardy than you. Oh, yeah? Let's find out.
Trebek started his career in journalism as a reporter with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The Ontario native made his American TV debut in 1973 as MC of The Wizard of Oz. In 2017, Trebek suffered a setback when he hit his head and underwent surgery. Then in March of 2019, Trebek told fans around the world that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, but he promised he would not give up.
The prognosis for this is not very encouraging, but I'm going to fight this.
As he was receiving treatment for cancer, Trebek spoke with Jane Pauley on CBS Sunday Morning.
For 35 years, I've enjoyed the success of the show, but I've never really thought about the impact the program was having on American viewers. And I've become part of their lives.
Trebek hosted more than 7,000 episodes of Jeopardy! Chris Martinez, CBS News.
Alex Trebek began his game show career in 1966 on Reach for the Top in his native Canada. It's time now to honor today's four-state hero, Edwin Parker, a pharmacist mate first class in the United States Navy. He served on the United States Naval Mobile Hospital No. 5 and the receiving stations, U.S. Naval Air Base, during World War II, where he earned the Good Conduct Medal. A native of Stella, Missouri, we salute you, Edwin Parker, our four-state hero. Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:30. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Major news network Saturday projected Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States. Biden, who turns 78 at the end of this month, will become the nation's oldest president when he is inaugurated in January. Senator Kamala Harris is America's first female and first Black and South Asian vice president-elect. The race was called Saturday morning after the Associated Press, CBS News, Fox News, and others projected Biden won the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, giving him more than the 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. Biden was also projected to take Nevada, putting him at 279 electoral votes. Only Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alaska are still in play. Plenty of voters in Kansas are upset about Saturday's call on the election. Trump supporters gathered outside the Kansas State House in Topeka, voicing their opposition to Biden. The dozens of people assembled there said they had concerns about fraud and corruption. Similar scene played out in Jefferson City, where hundreds gathered in front of the state capitol with flags and shirts showing their support for Trump, saying they believe the election was stolen. Protesters at the Stop the Steal rally walked to the governor's mansion in hopes that Mike Person would hear them and publicly support the president. Over in Baxter Springs, the community came together to show their support for the brave men and women who serve our country. Marching downtown in the 7th Annual Veterans Parade, different groups, including the Lions Club and Baxter Springs High School Marching Band, took part. Afterwards, a Veterans Memorial service was held. Tropical Storm Eta arrives in Florida, and some Fort Lauderdale streets are completely underwater as Tropical Storm Eta brought heavy rain and strong winds. People were seen wading through waters and trying to get to higher ground. The storm, which has been tearing through South and Central America, finally made landfall in the Florida Keys on Sunday, with sustained winds around 65 miles an hour.
Now get this, Tanya, there's a chance that Eta makes landfall twice.
Really?
Could make landfall yet again. Let's run down to South Florida, see where it stands right now, right on the Florida Keys. Tropical storm strength. Now, high uncertainty exactly what track it's going to take, but we know it's going to back up first and has a chance to reemerge as a Category 1. Here's the thing. A low pressure system means it loses its steering influence. And so while this model shows it tracking toward the Florida Panhandle, making landfall a second time, as a matter of fact, when it hit the Florida Keys on Sunday, first hurricane this season to make landfall in Florida. Now, like I said, while this model has it going toward the Panhandle, there's a chance that once it loses that steering influence, it could just sit right here in the Gulf and actually not reemerge as anything. It's going to be until the middle of the week until we really get a good bearing on that. One thing I do know that's going to happen, we're going to see thunderstorm activity followed by a cold front here by the time we get in tomorrow morning and into Wednesday. Now, still sits off to our far northwest. Like cloud cover, we're still going to have just a gorgeous, gorgeous Monday. Freeman Health System Sky Camera in Joplin, where we sit at a very comfortable 62 degrees. Wind's been all over the place. Eventually, it is going to be a little bit blustery. But in the meantime, 66 in Chanute, 64 in Monette, and 61 right now in Pittsburgh. We've seen it as high as 20 miles per hour. We've seen it die down to 3 miles per hour. Winds have been back and forth all day long, but we're not seeing any of the shift as of yet in the northwest that's going to indicate the cold front. So let's go ahead and push up into the mid to high 70s later on today. Gradually clearing skies. So we'll get rid of our morning cloud cover, but now it begins in earnest here Tuesday morning. You'll notice when we turn the clock, we're still sitting in the mid to high 60s. That's not too bad at all, but look at what happens. Thunderstorm activity develops. Number one, got some heavy rains that'll be with that. High winds as well to the northwest and a fair amount of lightning. Now, as this drops through, look at the difference in temperature right there from Wichita to Joplin, and we're not going to be able to escape that. Our thermometer just goes straight down throughout the afternoon and evening hours, as low as the 30s by the time we turn it into Wednesday morning. We get a rebound. We'll have pretty normalized November temperatures for the rest of the week. And hey, you know, the thunderstorm activity is coming. Not necessarily a bad thing. Our precipitation for the month of November sits at a big fat goose egg. Be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. KOAM News Now Facebook and our Instapoll question this morning: if President Trump should concede to former Vice President Biden the election or continue down legal avenues in battleground states. Joe Turner says he should not concede. If the Democrats who tried to impeach him 2 times and failed, and the media that's dogged him every day since he took office, and a house full of naysayers, come on, man. Check the ballots in a recount. Less than 1% difference in 3 states. And Dare says, I want to know all legal ballots were counted. Kathy Manning, too much proof. Democrats messed up the voting process. And Laura Cliphon Wright says, I supported and voted for Trump. However, I believe election results and will support the voice of the people. I have no problem double checking the count, but I'm confident that my candidate did not win. Appreciate all your engagement this morning. Now, time to turn it over to Jesse in Studio K.
Thanks, Michael. Yep. Well, you know, there's a lot going on in the 4-state area this month, and that's why we bring our friend Emily Frankowski from Connect to Culture in to break it all down for us. Emily, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Jesse. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm ready for a new week, and hopefully we can focus more on what's going on here in the 4-state area, less on election stuff. So without further ado, let's break it down and start with performances.
Absolutely. I think we all need a break.
Oh, yeah.
So the first performance we have on the list is Mad Science at Northwood. This is Friday, November 13th, so Friday the 13th, 7 p.m. I don't know if you've ever been, but Northwood Arts and Events Center is a neo show, and it's actually an old church built in 1907.
Wow.
It can seat about 200 inside. They've reinvented it into an arts and entertainment kind of event space.
Right.
So this is going to be a jazz funk quartet from Springfield that's going to come and provide some musical fun for everybody.
That's awesome. That sounds like it'll be really jazz in a church, you said?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
It's beautiful inside too. They've taken a lot of care to really keep the integrity of the building and just a really cool space.
Very cool. And then Dream Theater's got some stuff going on, right?
Yes. Dream Theater Company is presenting The Nightman Cometh, and this is Friday and Saturday, November 20 and 21st, 7:30 p.m. If you don't know what this is about, you kind of have to be a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the TV show, because this is kind of a rock opera that one of the main character presents at the end of the 4th season. So if you're a It's Always Sunny fan, this is for you. If not, I don't know if you'd be that completely in tune with it, but it's all for a good cause. It's actually a fundraiser for Jomo Pride, so it should be a lot of fun for those that know kind of are in the know,
Well, I love that photo too, so that's fantastic. So we'll have the info about those performances on our page, and then really quickly, I know there's some events that are happening as well, including a book launch, right?
Yeah, there's a book launch with a local author, F.C. Schultz, An Honest Life is Immortal. So it's a collection of poetry. If you pre-order the book, you get to be into this live launch where he will recite some of his works Thursday, November 12th, 8 p.m. So that's really fun. And then we also have a Christmas family photo opportunity at Joplin Little Theater Saturday, November 14th at 9. So just give them a call if you want to have your Christmas photos taken on the Joplin Little Theater stage. Sounds like a really great Christmas card idea.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Well, especially with the holidays coming up, it makes sense. Get your cards and send it to everybody who you can't be with, especially this holiday season. I feel like that's the best way to go.
Exactly.
Very cool. Well, there's exhibits and there's classes and there's a lot more happening around the 4-state area. We'll have the info about those performances and events on our morning show page, and then we're going to come back and ask Emily all about some exhibits and frankly some classes to learn how to get into the arts even more. So we'll be right back on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. With COVID-19 cases on the rise, U.S. employers slowed their hiring in October. Nancy Chen has a look at the latest snapshot of the labor market.
Sean Wilson has waited tables for 17 years. But with Chicago once again banning indoor dining, he joins the millions of Americans without a steady paycheck.
I took satisfaction. I took a certain amount of pride in being able to provide for my kids. Now that's in question.
As the coronavirus surges across the nation, job growth slowed in October, with employers adding 638,000 jobs. And while the unemployment rate dropped from 7.9 to 6.9%, CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger says the recovery has slowed.
We lost 22 million jobs between March and April. Since then, we've gained back more than half of them. But what we've been seeing is for the last 6 months, the pace of increase is starting to decelerate. At the state level, without additional stimulus, many of the nation's largest states will be forced to lay off workers.
One bright spot in the labor picture could be in retail. Companies are preparing for a surge in internet shopping as we head closer to the holidays.
Amazon has been adding jobs throughout the pandemic and is now hiring 100,000 new workers.
We know that the pandemic has hit our local communities very hard, so we're proud to offer thousands of jobs to our local communities where people can provide for their families.
Target and Walmart are also staffing up for the holidays, as well as both UPS and FedEx, which are preparing to ship billions of packages around the world. But as we head into the holidays, many Americans are facing hardship. More than 3.5 million have been jobless for more than 6 months. Nancy Chen, CBS News, New York.
Well, Wall Street did not show a dramatic reaction to the job numbers, the stock market pausing its week-long rally as investors wait for news on the election. Americans are starting to spend and borrow more, an encouraging sign to economists who worried that consumers would cut back in response to new COVID-19 cases. The Federal Reserve is reporting consumer borrowing went up in September. Americans borrowing $16.2 billion in the fall. That's up $6.9 billion in August. Now, the increase includes $3.98 billion in credit card borrowing and $12.2 billion in auto and student loans. The report does not cover mortgages or other debt secured by real estate. Now, if you want to sail the high seas as a coronavirus protocols tester, you could be right up Royal Caribbean Cruise Line's alley. The cruise line said it's going to be in need of volunteer coronavirus protocol testers soon. New rules for cruise ships were released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention last week. The CDC saying cruise lines will be required to hold simulated voyages in order to test their ability to mitigate the risk of spreading COVID-19. Now, how Royal Caribbean will recruit volunteers for the mock voyages isn't known just yet. Sounds fun, well, I guess there's a pro and a con. But starting next month, anytime you download an app, Apple will require the app's developer to provide information on their privacy practices. This means Apple users will be able to get a better idea of what's going on inside an app before downloading it, much like a nutrition label on groceries. Through the privacy pages on each app's product page, users can read about some of the data the app may collect and whether that data is linked to them or used to track them. We'll be right back with more after this, but before we go and learn about comic books and more, let's take a look at those market prices before the opening bell. Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. This morning we are talking to our friend Emily Frankowski, who is with Connect to Culture. And Emily, we are so happy to have you here because as much as we love performances and events, and we covered those earlier, there are some classes and exhibits that are definitely worth talking about here. So why don't you kick it off with some of these exhibits? I understand there's a membership show coming up at Spiva, right?
Absolutely, yes. There is a 73rd annual membership show coming up at Spiva. This is starting, actually it already started, October 17th through December 19th. So you have plenty of time to take a look at it. Basically, the membership show at Spiva is just what it sounds like. All artist members that are part of Spiva show and exhibit their work. Oftentimes they're for sale. So that's going on in their main gallery right now. So go ahead and take a trip downtown to Joplin and see Spiva's membership show. There's woodworking, painting, pottery, jewelry making, so many different mediums, something for everybody. But it's always fun to see the creativity that just is right here in Joplin.
Yeah, well, I understand there's some stuff going on at Crowder as well, right?
Yes, that's even more Joplin creativity. It's Joplin Regional Artist Coalition's new exhibit, which is called Renewal. You know, everyone's feeling a little sluggish lately. And so they created artwork that embodies renewal and just, you know, enlivening yourself. So shake all of that off and go down to Crowder and take a look at these really inspiring pieces.
All right, well, last but not least, I want to dive into these classes. And before we talk about Jeremy Hahn, I want to talk about what's happening at local color, because there's some pretty cool stuff happening there as well.
Yeah, so this is another opportunity to create some holiday cheer. It's a paint, a Christmas ornament, and card workshop with Joanne Allen, and this is for ages 18 plus on Friday, November 20th in the afternoon at 1. But you will create your very own ornament and a card that goes along with it. So if you're into writing Christmas cards, this is a perfect opportunity to design your card with a professional artist right there at your disposal.
Wait, so you're making your own Christmas ornament?
Yes, yep. You'll paint your Christmas ornament as well and then put it on your tree at home.
Too cool. All right, and last but not least, let's talk about Jeremy Hahn, because if anybody knows Jeremy, they know that his expertise of comic illustration is, I mean, you can't even begin to describe it without showing it. So can you tell us, the fact he's teaching a class is incredible.
Yes, he's a professional artist, and this is it's called Drawing Comics, Sequential Comic Illustration with Jeremy Hahn. It's one of the Neosho Arts Council's fall workshop classes, and costs $30. It's on Zoom. It is geared more towards adults 18 plus, but basically he will go through creating comics with you and kind of drawing things out. So they have some different supplies that they recommend you having before the workshop. It's a 2-night workshop, so you learn from a professional comic artist, Jeremy Hahn, who lives in Joplin, and but he's known not only in Joplin but throughout the United States, and I would have to say possibly worldwide as well.
Yeah, he's a comic. I mean, from what I understand, his work has been seen everywhere. He's done some of the biggest comic books in the world. So yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to have all that information on our morning show page. But Emily, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. We are going to be having all that info and more on there. And let's check out, Michael, is it nice outside? Can we go outside?
Gonna be a gorgeous Monday, Mr.
Thank
Irwin.
goodness.
Emily, I want to thank you so much for joining us as well. Always love having you on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, live look outside of Television City. Once again, the flag picking right back up. That thing's been back and forth all morning long. Freeman Health System sky camera where we had some clouds gather. Still very comfortable, 62 degrees. Whole bunch of 62s on the board throughout southwest Missouri and the central portion of the 4 states. Warmer out to the west. Neodesha and Chanute chiming in at 66. Like I said, winds a little bit everywhere. Look in the far, far top left-hand corner. Starting to see a little bit of a shift up there. That's because we've got a cold front that's working in. Take a quick look at Ada as it made landfall last night on the Florida Keys and has a chance to reemerge and make landfall twice, as it very well could head toward the Florida Panhandle. Now, color contour will show you exactly where that cold front sits right there, making its way through Nebraska. Now, it's going to be a while before it gets to us. Even that rain out in West Kansas won't affect our beautiful Monday as we make it up into the high 70s. Here's the important part. It is early tomorrow morning. There's the thunderstorm that develops, high winds, lightning, heavy rain, and on the backside of it, watch the mercury just drop as the clouds clear through Tuesday afternoon and evening. Severe thunderstorm risk map does put the northwest portion in the minimal category, but after that, hey, we get through it. We need a little precip, and our temperatures are back into the 60s. We'll be back and wrap up this edition of the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Here's what's happening today. President-elect Joe Biden is expected to announce details of his COVID-19 task force today. At a victory rally Saturday, Biden promised to fight the virus and work to unite Americans when he takes office on January 20th. Biden plans to unveil a series of executive orders on day 1 of his presidency to reverse many of President Trump's policies. The U.S. suffered its worst week of the pandemic, and Saturday, 130,000 new infections were reported. That's the most since the pandemic began. Close to 10 million confirmed cases have now been reported in the U.S. More than 237,000 have died, the most in the world. Alex Trebek, the beloved host of Jeopardy for more than 3 decades, has died at the age of 80 after a nearly 2-year battle with pancreatic cancer. He died at home early Sunday with family and friends at his side, according to a statement from Sony Studios. Let's check in with Michael with a final look at your forecast.
Windy and warm today. Get ready for thunderstorm activity early tomorrow, and then bundle up tomorrow afternoon as our temperatures are going to drop down into the 40s.
A small Kentucky town elects a dog as mayor. Wilbur, the French bulldog, is the newly elected mayor of Radish Hash, Kentucky, edging out a fierce field of renowned rivals that included Smokey the Rooster and Stella the Fat Cat. Good job, dog. The town has reportedly elected a dog mayor every 4 years since the 1990s, with residents casting their vote by donating to the local historical society. Wilbur will follow in the four-legged footsteps of his predecessor.
It's a pretty cool thing to do in Rabbit Hash. It's actually online voting that anybody can partake in. Each vote costs $1, and they continually raise about $20,000 every 4 years while they do this.
That's the greatest.
It's a tradition.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So who exactly makes the decisions in Rabbit Hash?
I think we just found out. I don't know. Thank you so much for letting us put the good in your morning.
More news and weather when we see you at noon.
Have a great morning and an even better day.